The pen trembled in Maya's hand as she scribbled the words on the back of the receipt, her fingers so cold they could barely grip it. Save me. 2 words. That's all she could manage before she heard his footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, deliberate, the sound that meant he was coming back. Her husband. The man who'd promised to love and protect her. The man whose hands had left purple fingerprints on her arms just an hour ago. She crumpled the receipt and shoved it deep into her apron pocket just as Derek rounded the corner into their tiny kitchen. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw clenched in that way that meant he was still angry, still looking for a reason to finish what he'd started. "What are you doing?" His voice was flat, dangerous. "Nothing. Just cleaning up." Maya's voice came out smaller than she intended, and she hated herself for it. Hated the way 6 years of marriage had turned her into this frightened thing that jumped at shadows. "Then why are you standing there like an idiot? We've got the Morellis coming for dinner in 2 hours, and this place looks like a dump." The Morellis. Maya's stomach twisted. Derek's new business partners, the ones he wouldn't shut up about for the past 3 weeks. The ones who were going to change everything for them. She didn't know much about Vincent Morelli, except what Derek had told her. That he owned half the restaurants in Boston, that he had connections, that you didn't say no to him, and that he was dangerous. "I'll have everything ready," Maya said, already moving toward the refrigerator, her body on autopilot. Survive the next 2 hours. That was all she had to do. Get through dinner, smile when she was supposed to smile, stay quiet when Derek wanted her quiet. Then maybe, just maybe, he'd leave her alone tonight. She spent the next 90 minutes cooking, her hands moving through familiar motions while her mind spun in circles. The receipt was still in her pocket, burning against her hip like a brand. She didn't even know why she'd written it. What good would 2 words do? Who would see it? Derek would serve the dinner himself probably, like he always did when he wanted to impress someone, leaving her in the kitchen like a ghost. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Maya heard Derek's voice turn smooth, obsequious, as he opened the door. "Mr. Morelli, thank you so much for coming. Please, come in." A different voice responded, deep and measured, with an edge that made something in Maya's chest tighten. "You have a nice home." It wasn't true. Their apartment was cramped and shabby, 3rd floor of a building that should have been condemned a decade ago. But Derek laughed like it was the greatest compliment he'd ever received. "My wife's been cooking all afternoon. Maya!" Derek's voice sharpened on her name. "Come meet our guests." Maya wiped her hands on her apron and stepped out of the kitchen. And then she saw him. Vincent Morelli stood in their cramped livings room like he'd walked out of a different world entirely. Everything about him was expensive. The black suit that fit him like it had been painted on. The watch that probably cost more than Maya's car. The shoes that gleamed even in their apartment's dim lighting. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that would have been handsome if it weren't so carefully expressionless. But it was his eyes that made Maya's breath catch. Dark, almost black, and completely unreadable. They swept over the room once, taking in everything, missing nothing before landing on her. For a moment, neither of them moved. "This is my wife, Maya," Derek said, his hand suddenly at the small of her back, pressing too hard. A warning. "Maya, this is Mr. Vincent Morelli and his associate, Marco." Maya hadn't even noticed the second man, broader and quieter, standing near the door. She forced herself to nod, to smile. "It's nice to meet you." Vincent's eyes hadn't left her face. "Mrs. Bennett." He didn't offer his hand, which was somehow a relief. Maya didn't think she could manage to touch him without trembling. "Something smells wonderful." "Thank you. I hope you're hungry." God, she sounded like an idiot. But Vincent just nodded, still watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes, and Maya felt suddenly exposed, like he could see straight through her smile to the fear underneath. "Why don't we sit down?" Derek said, already steering Vincent toward their small dining table. "Maya will bring out the food." It was a dismissal. Maya retreated gratefully to the kitchen, her heart hammering. She didn't understand why Vincent Morelli made her so nervous. He hadn't done anything threatening, hadn't even really spoken to her. But there was something about him, something coiled and waiting, like a snake deciding whether to strike. She loaded the pasta onto plates with shaking hands, arranging everything carefully. Perfect. It had to be perfect, or Derek would. The receipt. Maya froze, one hand on a plate. The receipt was still in her apron pocket. She'd meant to throw it away, to burn it, to do anything but keep it on her person like evidence. What if it fell out? What if Derek saw? But there was no time to deal with it now. She could hear Derek's voice from the dining room, talking too fast, too eager, explaining some business proposal that Vincent was probably barely listening to. She had to bring the food out. Maya carried the plates to the table, setting them down carefully. Vincent's eyes tracked her movement, and she felt her cheeks flush under his scrutiny. She set his plate in front of him last, and as she did, Derek's voice cut through the air. "What the hell is this?" Maya's blood turned to ice. She looked down at Vincent's plate. The pasta looked fine. The sauce was perfect. What had she— "There's a hair," Derek said, his voice tight with fury. "On our guest's food. Are you serious right now, Maya?" She couldn't see a hair. She looked closer, squinting, and maybe there was something. One tiny strand that could have been anything. But Derek was already standing, his face flushed. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Morelli. My wife is usually more careful than this. Here, let me—" "It's fine," Vincent said quietly, but Derek was already grabbing the plate, and in his haste, he knocked it against the edge of the table. Red sauce splattered across Maya's white blouse, hot enough to make her gasp. "Jesus Christ, Maya, move!" Derek shoved her aside and she stumbled, catching herself on the wall. "You're making this worse. Just get out of here. Go clean yourself up. I'll handle this." Maya's face burned with humiliation. She could feel Vincent's eyes on her, could feel the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. Instead, she turned and walked quickly back to the kitchen, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. In the kitchen, she grabbed a dishcloth and tried uselessly to blot at the sauce on her blouse. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the cloth. From the dining room, she could hear Derek's voice, apologizing profusely, explaining how stressed Maya had been lately, how she wasn't usually so clumsy. She wanted to scream. Instead, she took a deep breath and reached into her apron pocket. The receipt was there, crumpled and small. She should throw it away. She should burn it. She should— Mrs. Bennet. Maya spun around so fast she almost dropped the receipt. Vincent Morelli stood in the doorway of her kitchen, filling it completely, his dark eyes fixed on her face. I'm sorry, I'll bring fresh plates. I don't care about the food." His voice was soft, but something in it made Maya go very still. "What happened to your arms?" Maya looked down instinctively. The bruises. She'd forgotten about the bruises. Her long sleeves usually covered them, but she'd been so focused on the sauce stain that she'd rolled them up without thinking. Purple-yellow fingerprints decorated both her forearms, clear as day. It's nothing. I'm clumsy. I bruise easily." The lies came automatically, well practiced. Vincent took a step into the kitchen, then another. Maya backed up until she hit the counter, trapped. He was so close now she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her head spin. "Don't lie to me." His voice was still soft, but there was steel underneath it now. "Who hurt you?" "No one. I told you I'm just— Maya." The way he said her name, familiar and intimate, like he had the right to use it, made something in her chest crack. "Look at me." She couldn't. If she looked at him, if she met those dark eyes, she would break. She would tell him everything. And then what? Derek was right in the next room. Derek, who would make her pay for embarrassing him, for talking to Vincent, for even thinking about. The receipt slipped from her numb fingers. It fell in slow motion, tumbling through the air before landing face up on the kitchen floor between them. Save me. The words were slightly smudged but perfectly legible in her desperate handwriting. Vincent's eyes dropped to it. For 3 seconds, maybe 5, he didn't move, didn't speak. Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only watch as he bent down smoothly and picked up the receipt. He read it once, twice. Then his eyes lifted to hers, and what she saw there made her take an involuntary step back. The careful blankness was gone, replaced by something cold and furious and utterly terrifying. Did he do this? Vincent's voice was barely above a whisper. Maya couldn't speak, couldn't move. But she must have done something. Flinched, maybe, or let her eyes dart toward the dining room, because Vincent's jaw tightened. How long? Please, Maya breathed. Please don't. He'll know I said something. He'll... How? Long. 6 years. The words came out broken, defeated. But it's not. It's not always like this. Sometimes he's good. Sometimes he's... Shut up. Vincent said it without heat, but Maya's mouth snapped closed anyway. He folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into his jacket pocket, his movements deliberate. Then he stepped closer, so close she had to tilt her head back to see his face. Listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice low and controlled. I'm going to go back out there. We're going to finish this dinner. You're going to stay in here and not come out unless he calls for you. Can you do that? Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. Vincent reached out, and Maya flinched instinctively. He froze, his hand hovering near her face, and something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe, or pain. Slowly, carefully, he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers gentle. This ends tonight. Then he was gone, his footsteps silent on the kitchen floor. Maya sank down against the counter, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. Her mind was blank with panic. What had she done? What had she just set in motion? Vincent Morelli was dangerous. Derek had said so himself. And now he knew. Now he'd seen the bruises, read her desperate plea for help. This ends tonight. What did that mean? From the dining room she heard voices. Derek's nervous laughter, Marco's low rumble, and Vincent, his voice smooth and easy, like nothing had happened. Actually, Derek, I want to discuss something with you, privately. Marco, why don't you wait in the car? Of course, boss. A pause. Then Derek, uncertain. I thought we were going to discuss the restaurant deal. We are, but this conversation requires discretion. I'm sure you understand. Derek laughed again, but it sounded strained. Sure, yeah, of course. Maya. His voice was sharp, and Maya struggled to her feet, her heart in her throat. But when she reached the dining room doorway, Vincent spoke first. Actually, I think your wife has done enough for tonight. Why don't you come with me? My car is more comfortable for business discussions anyway. It wasn't a request. Derek hesitated, looking between Vincent and Maya like he suspected a trap. But what could he do? You didn't say no to Vincent Morelli. That's what Derek had told her a dozen times. Right. Okay. Maya, I'll be back soon. Clean up this mess. He grabbed his jacket and followed Vincent to the door, still talking, still trying to ingratiate himself. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Maya stood frozen in the dining room, surrounded by dirty plates and the wreckage of her attempted dinner party. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and her own ragged breathing. What had she done? She cleaned up mechanically, her hands moving through familiar tasks while her mind raced. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then an hour. Derek didn't come back. Maya tried to tell herself that was normal. Business discussions took time, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking as she washed the dishes, and she kept looking at the door, expecting it to burst open, expecting Derek to storm in with that look on his face, that meant she was in trouble. At 9:30, someone knocked. Maya's heart stopped. She set down the dish she was holding and walked slowly to the door, each step taking tremendous effort. Through the peephole, she could see Marco, Vincent's associate, standing in the hallway with his hands folded in front of him. She opened the door a crack. "Where's Derek?" "Mr. Morelli wants to see you. Come with me, please." I can't just leave. Derek will... Your husband won't be home tonight." Marco's expression didn't change. "Mr. Morelli insists. It's not a request." Every instinct Maya had screamed at her to slam the door, to lock it, to call someone. But who would she call? The police? And tell them what? That her husband's business partner was asking to see her? That she was afraid? She thought about the receipt in Vincent's pocket, about the way his eyes had gone cold when he saw her bruises. This ends tonight. "Let me get my coat," Maya heard herself say. Marco drove in silence, the car gliding through Boston's streets like a shark through water. Maya sat in the back, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. She tried to see where they were going, but the city lights blurred together, unfamiliar. They weren't going back downtown. They were heading toward the waterfront, toward the expensive part of the city where Maya had only ever driven through, never stopped. Finally, Marco pulled up in front of a building that looked like it belonged in a movie, all glass and steel and understated elegance. A doorman opened Maya's door before she could reach for the handle. "Ms. Bennett, Mr. Morelli is expecting you, 18th floor." Ms. Bennett, not Mrs. The distinction felt important somehow, though Maya couldn't have said why. The elevator was all mirrors and soft lighting. Maya avoided looking at her reflection. She didn't want to see the fear in her own eyes. The 18th floor hallway was empty and pristine, with only 2 doors. Marco stopped at the one on the left and knocked once. "Come in." Vincent's voice, muffled by the door but unmistakable. Marco opened the door and gestured for Maya to enter. She did, her legs moving like they belonged to someone else. The apartment, no, penthouse, was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Boston Harbor, the city lights reflecting off the black water. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and dark colors. And in the center of it all, standing by the windows with a glass of whiskey in his hand, was Vincent Morelli. He'd taken off his jacket and rolled up his shirt sleeves, and somehow that made him look more dangerous, not less. The careful polish was gone, replaced by something raw and real. "Sit down," he said without turning around. Maya sat on the edge of a leather sofa, her hands still clasped in her lap. Behind her, she heard Marco close the door, but she didn't hear him leave. "Where's Derek?" Her voice came out small. "Gone." What does that mean, gone? Vincent turned to face her then, and his eyes were as cold and dark as they'd been in her kitchen. "It means you'll never have to worry about him again." The bottom dropped out of Maya's stomach. "What did you do?" "What I should have done the moment I saw those bruises on your arms." Vincent crossed the room and sat down across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Let me be very clear, Maya. Your husband was stealing from me. For 6 months, he's been skimming money from the restaurant accounts, thinking I wouldn't notice. I was going to kill him for that alone." Maya couldn't breathe. You killed him?" "I said I was going to." Vincent's voice was patient, like he was explaining something obvious. "But then I met you. Then I saw what he did to you. And I realized that death was too easy for a man like Derek Bennett. I don't understand. He's alive. For now." Vincent pulled the crumpled receipt from his pocket and smoothed it out on the coffee table between them. "He'll stay alive as long as he stays far away from Boston. Far away from you. I made that very clear to him." Maya stared at the receipt, at her own desperate handwriting. "You can't just... People will ask questions. Derek has friends, family. Derek has debts and enemies. Trust me. No one is going to look too hard for a small-time embezzler who skipped town." Vincent leaned back, studying her. The question is, what do you want to do now? What do you mean? You're free, Maya. Your husband is gone. The lease on that apartment is in his name. You don't have to go back there. You can go anywhere. Do anything. He paused. Unless you want to stay. Something in the way he said it made Maya's pulse quicken. Stay where? Here, with me. The words hung in the air between them. Maya couldn't have heard him right. Couldn't have understood correctly. What? Vincent stood and moved to the windows, his back to her. I'm not a good man, Maya. I do bad things for bad reasons, and I don't lose sleep over it. But when I saw those bruises on your arms, when I read what you wrote on that receipt. He turned to face her. I made a decision. You're mine now, under my protection. Anyone who touches you will answer to me. Maya's heart was hammering so hard, she thought it might burst. You can't just... I'm not something you can claim like property. I know that. Vincent's voice was soft but firm. That's why I'm asking. Stay with me. Let me keep you safe. Or leave. I'll give you money, help you start over somewhere Derek will never find you. The choice is yours. It was insane. All of it was insane. Maya had spent 6 years in hell, and now some Mafia boss she'd just met was offering to what? Protect her? Keep her? It was crazy. But when she looked at Vincent, at the way he was watching her with those dark, intense eyes, she didn't feel afraid. Not the way she'd been afraid of Derek. This was different. This was the fear of standing at the edge of a cliff, not knowing if you could fly. If I stay, Maya said slowly, what would that mean? It means you live here. It means I take care of you. It means no one touches you, hurts you, or even looks at you wrong without my permission. And what do you get out of it? Vincent smiled for the first time since she'd met him, and it transformed his face completely. The satisfaction of knowing Derek Bennett is out there somewhere, alive and broken, knowing that the wife he treated like garbage is living in luxury with a man he can never touch. That I took the one thing he thought he owned. The smile faded. And maybe eventually you'll stop looking at me like I'm about to hit you. Maya's throat tightened. I don't... You do. You flinch every time I move too fast. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You make yourself small. Vincent crossed the room and knelt in front of her, putting himself at eye level. I want to watch you remember how to take up space, Maya. I want to see you stop being afraid. His hand moved slowly, carefully, giving her time to pull away. But Maya didn't move. She let him cup her cheek, his palm warm and rough against her skin. Say yes, Vincent said softly. Maya closed her eyes. She thought about going back to that apartment, to those thin walls and that broken lock on the bathroom door. She thought about jumping at every footstep, about measuring her words before she spoke, about the constant calculation of how to stay safe. And then she thought about this penthouse with its view of the harbor, this dangerous man with his gentle hands and his cold eyes. It wasn't safety, not really. It was just a different kind of danger. But maybe that was okay. Maybe she was tired of being safe. Yes, Maya whispered. Vincent's thumb stroked across her cheekbone once, twice. Good. He stood, pulling her up with him. Marco will bring your things tomorrow. Tonight you sleep in the guest room. Second door on the right. You'll find clothes in the closet that should fit you. You just happen to have women's clothes here? I had Marco buy them while we were having our discussion with Derek. Vincent's smile was faint. I was fairly confident you'd say yes. Maya didn't know whether to be flattered or insulted by his presumption. She settled for something in between. Pretty sure of yourself. I'm sure of what I want. His eyes were dark and serious again. And I wanted you from the moment I saw you standing in that kitchen, trying to smile like your world wasn't falling apart. Maya's breath caught. You don't even know me. Then I'll learn. Vincent's hand moved to the small of her back, guiding her toward the hallway. But right now, you need to rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out the details. The guest room was beautiful, all soft whites and blues, with a bed that looked like a cloud. Maya stood in the doorway, suddenly overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the last 4 hours. Her husband was gone. She was in a stranger's penthouse. She'd just agreed to stay with a man she'd met at dinner, a man who'd admitted to being dangerous, to doing bad things. Vincent? Her voice was small. He'd started to leave, but he turned back. Yes? Thank you. For seeing the receipt. For doing something. Something flickered in his eyes. That same pain she'd seen earlier when she'd flinched from his touch. Go to sleep, Maya. We'll talk in the morning. He closed the door softly behind him. Maya stood there for a long moment, then walked to the window. The harbor stretched out below her, dark and endless. Somewhere out there, Derek was alive, probably cursing her name, probably plotting his revenge. But he couldn't get to her now. Vincent had made sure of that. Vincent, who'd read 2 words on a crumpled receipt and decided to upend her entire life. Vincent, whose hands had been so careful when he touched her face. Vincent, who'd called her his. Maya pressed her palm against the cool glass and allowed herself, for the first time in 6 years, to feel something other than fear. She felt hope. The next morning, Maya woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of low voices from the main room. She lay still for a moment, disoriented, before memory came flooding back. Derek. Vincent. The receipt. Everything. She was wearing an oversized t-shirt she'd found in the closet. Soft cotton that must have cost more than her entire wardrobe back home. Back at the apartment. It wasn't home anymore. Would never be home again. Maya got up and padded barefoot to the door, opening it cautiously. Vincent sat at the kitchen island with Marco. Both men bent over what looked like financial reports. They were speaking in low, rapid Italian, and Maya caught maybe 1 word in 10. Vincent looked up as soon as she appeared, his dark eyes sweeping over her once before returning to her face. Coffee's in the pot, milk's in the fridge. So casual, like it was totally normal for her to be here, standing in his kitchen in borrowed clothes. Maya poured herself coffee with shaking hands, hyper-aware of both men watching her. Marco muttered something in Italian that made Vincent's jaw tighten. English, Marco. I said, "You're playing with fire, boss." Marco's English was accented, but perfect. There are protocols for this kind of thing. You can't just, I can do whatever I want. Vincent's voice was flat, final. Tell Sal I'll call him this afternoon about the shipment, and find out who Derek was working with. I want names by tonight. Marco stood, giving Maya a look she couldn't quite decipher. Somewhere between pity and respect. Yes, boss. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, pausing just before he left. Be careful with this one, Vin. She's not like the others. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The others? Maya heard herself ask. Vincent was watching her over his coffee cup, those dark eyes missing nothing. Women I've been with. Women who knew what they were getting into. He set the cup down. You're different. Because I didn't have a choice? Because you wrote "Save me" on a receipt and then dropped it at my feet like an offering. Vincent stood and moved closer, each step deliberate. Because you said yes when you could have said no. Because you're standing in my kitchen looking at me like you can't decide if you want to run or stay, and it's the most honest thing I've seen in years. Maya's hands tightened on her coffee mug. I don't know how to do this. Do what? This. Whatever this is. She gestured vaguely at the penthouse, at him, at everything. I don't know how to be someone's, what did you call it? Under your protection? Vincent smiled, and again it transformed his face. Then I'll teach you, starting with breakfast. You're too thin. I'm not, you are. He moved to the fridge and started pulling out eggs, vegetables, cheese. When's the last time you ate a real meal? And don't lie to me. Maya thought about yesterday's lunch, a handful of crackers eaten standing up over the sink while Derek yelled at someone on the phone. I don't remember. That's what I thought. Vincent started cooking with the easy competence of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Sit down, watch, learn. From now on, you eat 3 meals a day. You're going to cook for me? Maya couldn't keep the disbelief out of her voice. Someone has to make sure you don't disappear entirely. He glanced at her over his shoulder. Besides, I like cooking. It's one of the few things I do that doesn't involve threatening people. There was something surreal about watching Vincent. Morelli, dangerous, feared, powerful, making her an omelet in his designer kitchen. He moved with the same precise control he'd shown yesterday, every motion economical and purposeful. Why me? Maya asked suddenly. You said you wanted me from the moment you saw me. But why? Vincent was quiet for a long moment, focused on the eggs sizzling in the pan. You want the truth? Yes. I saw the way you flinched when your husband touched your back. The way you made yourself smaller when he looked at you. The way you smiled like it was armor. He slid the omelet onto a plate and brought it to her, setting it down gently. I've seen a lot of ugly things in my life, Maya. I've done a lot of ugly things. But something about watching you try to hold yourself together in that kitchen. He shook his head. It made me angry. And then when you dropped that receipt, when I read what you'd written, you decided to save me. Maya stared at the omelet. It looked perfect, fluffy and golden, the kind of thing she'd forgotten people could make. I decided to keep you. Vincent leaned against the counter, his arms crossed. There's a difference. Maya picked up her fork with trembling hands and took a bite. It was delicious, rich and savory, and exactly what she needed. She took another bite, then another, and suddenly she was eating like she was starving, like she'd never tasted real food before. Vincent watched her with satisfaction. Good. I should hate you, Maya said between bites. You basically kidnapped me. I gave you a choice. Some choice. Stay with the Mafia boss or go hide from my husband for the rest of my life. Would you rather I'd left you there? Vincent's voice was soft but sharp. Would you rather I'd walked out of that kitchen and finished my dinner like I'd never seen the bruises? Never read your receipt? Maya set down her fork. No. Then stop telling yourself you should feel something you don't. He moved closer, stopping just within arm's reach. You're allowed to be relieved. You're allowed to be grateful. You're even allowed to be attracted to me, even though you think you shouldn't be. Maya's face flamed. I'm not. You are. Vincent's smile was knowing. You have been since the moment I walked into your apartment. I saw the way your breath changed when I got close to you in the kitchen. The way your pupils dilated when I touched your face last night. It doesn't mean anything unless you want it to. He reached out slowly, giving her time to move away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The same gesture he'd made yesterday, gentle and deliberate. I'm not your husband, Maya. I won't take anything you don't give freely. But I won't pretend I don't want you either. Maya's heart was hammering. What do you want from me? Everything. Vincent's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. But I'll settle for you finishing your breakfast, and then letting me take you shopping. You need more clothes than what Marco Panic bought yesterday. The sudden shift in tone made Maya blink. Shopping? Shopping, then lunch, then whatever you want to do with the rest of your day. His hand dropped away, leaving her skin tingling. Consider it orientation to your new life. I don't have any money. You don't need money. You have me. It should have sounded arrogant, possessive. Instead, it just sounded like a fact, simple and inarguable. Maya finished her omelet in silence, her mind spinning. This man had upended her entire existence in less than 24 hours. Had sent her husband away, given her a place to live, cooked her breakfast, and now wanted to take her shopping, like it was all perfectly normal. And the terrifying part was that she wanted to let him. Wanted to see where this strange, dangerous path led. Wanted to stop being afraid. Okay, Maya said finally. Shopping. But I need to ask you something first. Ask. What happens when you get tired of me? The question came out small and scared, all her fears condensed into 7 words. What happens when I'm not interesting anymore? When you realize I'm just broken? Vincent's expression went very still. Then he moved, fast enough to make her gasp, caging her in against the counter with his hands on either side of her. Not touching, just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. Listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice low and intense. You are not broken. You survived 6 years with a man who wanted to break you, and you're still here. Still fighting. You wrote, "Save me," on a receipt, and then had the courage to drop it at a stranger's feet. His eyes burned into hers. That's not broken, Maya. That's strong. I don't feel strong. You will. One hand came up to cup her face, tilting it so she had to meet his eyes. And when you get tired of me, because you will eventually, when you realize you don't need my protection anymore, I'll let you go. I'll give you money, resources, whatever you need to start over. But until that day comes, you're mine, and I take care of what's mine. Maya's breath shuddered out of her. Kiss me. She hadn't meant to say it. The words just came out, raw and desperate and real. Vincent's eyes went very dark. You don't know what you're asking for. Yes, I do. Maya's hands came up to grip his shirt, holding him in place even though he was 3 times stronger than her. I need to know what it feels like when someone wants me because they choose to, not because I'm convenient. Please. For a moment, Vincent didn't move. Then he leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind, to pull away. His lips brushed hers once, soft and questioning. Maya made a sound low in her throat and pulled him closer. The kiss exploded between them. 6 years of fear and pain and loneliness pouring out of Maya, met by Vincent's, careful control finally cracking. His hands slid into her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss, and Maya opened for him, desperate and hungry and alive. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. Mine, he said softly. Say it. Yours, Maya whispered back. And for the first time in 6 years, she meant it as a choice, not a sentence. 3 months later, Maya stood in Vincent's penthouse, looking out at the harbor at sunset. The water was on fire with reflected light, and somewhere out there, Derek was living in whatever hole Vincent had sent him to. She didn't think about him much anymore. Didn't wake up at night expecting to hear his footsteps. Instead, she woke up to Vincent's arms around her, to morning coffee and quiet conversations, to a life she was still learning how to live. You're thinking too loud, Vincent said from behind her, his arms sliding around her waist. I can hear it from the kitchen. Maya leaned back against his chest. Just thinking about how much has changed. Having regrets? No. She turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face. Never. Vincent's smile was real now, not the careful mask he'd worn that first night. Good, because I have something to ask you. What? He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, expensive. Marry me. Maya's heart stopped. What? Marry me. Vincent's voice was steady, sure. Not because you have to, not because you owe me anything, but because I love you, and I want everyone to know that you're mine by choice, not circumstance. Tears pricked at Maya's eyes. Vincent, if you're not ready, I'll ask again tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day until you say yes. He took her hand, his thumb rubbing circles on her palm. But I need you to know that this, us, it's not just protection anymore. It never really was. Maya thought about the terrified woman who'd written 2 desperate words on a receipt 3 months ago. She was still there, somewhere inside, but she was buried under layers of healing and happiness and learning to trust again. Yes, Maya said through her tears. Yes, yes, yes. Vincent slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her, soft and slow and full of promises. When they broke apart, he wiped away her tears with his thumbs, his touch gentle. "I love you," Maya whispered. "I know I'm not supposed to, and I know it's too fast, but I do." "Who says it's too fast?" Vincent kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her nose. "I decided you were mine the moment I read that receipt. This is just making it official." That night, Vincent took her to his favorite restaurant, the one he owned, where the staff knew to give them the private room in the back. Over wine and pasta and dessert, he told her about his plans for their future. "I want to get out," he said, his fingers laced with hers across the table. "Or at least, get more legitimate. Expand the restaurants. Invest in real businesses. Marco thinks I'm crazy, but you want a different life," Maya finished. "One where you don't have to threaten people. One where our children don't have to grow up wondering if their father's going to come home at night." Vincent's eyes were serious. "If you want children, if you want any of this, I won't assume," Maya squeezed his hand. "I want it, all of it, with you." They stayed there until the restaurant closed, talking and planning and dreaming. And when Vincent finally drove them home, when he carried her to bed and made love to her with a tenderness that still made her want to cry, Maya felt the last piece of fear dissolve. She was free. Not just from Derek, but from the prison of terror she'd been living in for so long. And she was loved, chosen, protected not because she was weak, but because someone had decided she was worth protecting. 6 months after that first dinner, Maya and Vincent got married in a small ceremony overlooking the harbor. Marco was Vincent's best man. Maya's sister, who she'd barely spoken to in years because Derek had isolated her, cried through the whole thing. As Vincent slid the wedding band onto her finger, Maya thought about that crumpled receipt, those 2 desperate words that had changed everything. Save me. Vincent had done that. But more importantly, he'd taught her how to save herself. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed her in front of everyone, long and deep and claiming. When they broke apart, he whispered against her lips, "Mine." "Yours," Maya whispered back. "Always." And this time, forever didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise. But peace, Maya was learning, had a way of making you forget that darkness never really disappears. It just waits. The call came on a Tuesday morning 6 weeks after the wedding. Maya was in the kitchen making coffee, humming something she'd heard on the radio, when Vincent's phone rang. She watched his face change as he listened, watched the careful blankness slide back into place like armor. "When?" His voice was cold. "How many?" A pause. "I'm on my way." He ended the call and looked at Maya, and something in his eyes made her stomach drop. "What happened?" "Derek's back in Boston." Vincent was already moving, grabbing his jacket, checking his gun. "He hit one of my restaurants last night, burned it to the ground. 3 people are in the hospital." Maya's coffee cup slipped from her numb fingers, shattering on the floor. "He came back? But you said he knew to stay away." "I know what I said." Vincent's jaw was tight. Apparently 6 months was long enough for him to get stupid. Or desperate. He crossed the room and gripped her shoulders. "Listen to me. You're going to stay here with Marco. You don't leave this building. You don't answer the door for anyone except me. Understand?" "Vincent, I understand." His voice cracked like a whip. "Yes." Maya's voice was small. "I understand." Vincent kissed her hard, almost bruising. Then he was gone. The door slammed behind him, and Maya was alone with Marco, who'd materialized from somewhere with that eerie silence he had. "He'll handle it," Marco said, but his hand was on his gun, and his eyes kept flicking to the door. Maya bent down and started picking up pieces of broken coffee cup with shaking hands. Derek was back. After everything, after 6 months of peace and healing and learning to be happy, he was back. And he'd hurt people. Burned down Vincent's restaurant. Because of her. "This is my fault," Maya whispered. No. Marco's voice was firm. This is Derek Bennett being a suicidal idiot. The boss will end him this time. Should have done it from the start. He let him live because of me. Maya looked up at Marco, pieces of ceramic cutting into her palms. He let Derek go because he thought I'd want that, but all it did was give him time to come back. Marco didn't argue, which was answer enough. The hours crawled by. Marco made phone calls in rapid Italian, his voice getting harder with each one. Maya sat on the couch, her hands clasped so tightly her fingers went numb, and tried not to think about Vincent out there, hunting Derek. Tried not to think about what would happen when they found each other. At 3 p.m, Marco's phone rang. He listened, his face going pale, then ended the call and looked at Maya. We need to move. Now. What? Why? Derek knows you're here. He's got people watching the building. The boss wants you somewhere safer until this is over. Marco was already pulling her toward the door. There's a car waiting in the garage. Stay low. Stay quiet. Maya's heart was hammering. How does he know where I am? Someone talked. Someone always talks. Marco's hand was on her back, propelling her forward. Questions later. Move now. They took the service elevator down to the parking garage. Maya's mind was spinning. Derek knew where she was. Had people watching? After 6 months of nothing, he'd come back with a plan, with resources. This wasn't just revenge. This was calculated. The garage was dim and echoing. Marco's car was parked near the exit, a black sedan that looked exactly like a dozen others. He opened the back door for Maya. Get in! Head down! Don't look up until I tell you. Maya slid into the back seat, her whole body trembling. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't. Hello, Maya. The voice came from the front passenger seat, and Maya's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice, had spent 6 years learning every nuance of it, every tone that meant danger. Derek sat in the front seat with a gun pointed at Marco's head. Drive, Derek said pleasantly. And tell your boss that if he wants to see his pretty little wife again, he'll meet me where this all started. You know the place. Marco's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. He'll kill you. Maybe, but I'll kill her first. Derek's eyes found Maya's in the rearview mirror, and his smile was poison. Hey, baby. Miss me? Maya couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. 6 months of healing evaporated in an instant, leaving behind the terrified woman who used to measure her words, who used to make herself small. Nothing to say? Derek's voice hardened. No, hello? No, I'm sorry for ruining my husband's life? Because that's what you did, Maya. You ruined everything. I had a good thing going with Morelli's operation. I had money, connections, a future. And you took it all away with your stupid little receipt. You were stealing from him, Maya heard herself say, her voice barely a whisper. You were hurting me. I was teaching you respect. Derek's gun shifted toward her, and Marco tensed. I gave you everything, a home, food, my name, and you repaid me by spreading your legs for the first man who paid attention to you. It wasn't like that. Drive, Derek snapped at Marco. And call Morelli. Tell him his time's up. Marco's jaw was clenched so tight, Maya thought it might crack, but he pulled out his phone with one hand, keeping the other on the wheel, and made the call. Boss, we've got a problem. Maya couldn't hear Vincent's response, but she felt it in the way Marco's shoulders tightened. Derek's got us. He wants you to meet him at the original apartment. Says if you don't come alone, he'll... Marco's eyes flicked to Maya. He'll kill her. The silence on the other end was worse than any shouting. Then Vincent's voice came through, cold and lethal, even through the phone's speaker. Put him on. Derek grabbed the phone. Morelli, nice to finally talk to you properly. You're a dead man. Vincent's voice was so calm it was terrifying. Maybe, but your wife dies first. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to come to Maya's old apartment. Alone. Unarmed. And we're going to have a conversation about respect and consequences. Derek's smile was vicious. You took everything from me. Now I'm returning the favor. If you hurt her? You'll what? Kill me? You should have done that 6 months ago, Morelli. This is what mercy gets you. Derek ended the call and tossed the phone back to Marco. Drive faster. I want to get there before your boss does something stupid. The drive back to Maya's old apartment building felt like a nightmare. The streets were familiar, but wrong, like seeing a childhood home after years away. Marco drove in silence, his eyes constantly checking mirrors, looking for an opening that never came. Derek kept the gun trained on him, occasionally swinging it toward Maya when Marco got too tense. They pulled up outside the building, that shabby third-floor walk-up where Maya had lived, in fear for 6 years, where she'd written those 2 desperate words. Everybody out, Derek gestured with the gun. Marco, you first. Hands where? I can see them. Maya, stay close to me. Real close. They climbed the stairs slowly. Maya's legs felt like lead, each step taking tremendous effort. The hallway smelled the same, cooking and mildew and desperation. Derek kept the gun against Marco's spine, using him as a shield, while his other hand gripped Maya's arm hard enough to bruise. The apartment door was unlocked. Derek kicked it open and shoved them inside. It looked exactly the same. Same worn furniture, same stained carpet, same tiny kitchen where she'd dropped that receipt 6 months ago. Maya's stomach churned. Sit, Derek ordered, gesturing to the couch. Both of you. They sat. Derek moved to the window, keeping the gun trained on them while he looked out at the street below. He's got 10 minutes, then I start shooting. Maya's mind was racing. Vincent would come. She knew he would. But coming alone and unarmed into Derek's trap? That was suicide, even for someone as dangerous as Vincent. Derek. Maya's voice was steadier than she expected. You don't have to do this. Shut up. He'll kill you. You know he will. Even if you shoot me first, he'll find you. He'll make it slow. Maya leaned forward. But if you stop now, if you let us go, maybe there's a way out of this. Derek laughed, the sound harsh and broken. There's no way out. Don't you get it? I'm already dead. I've been dead since the moment you dropped that receipt. He turned to look at her, and his eyes were wild. I spent 6 months in a hole, Maya. 6 months knowing that everyone was laughing at me. Knowing that my wife was sleeping in another man's bed, wearing his ring, living his life. Do you have any idea what that did to me? You hurt me first, Maya said quietly. For 6 years. I loved you, Derek's voice cracked. Everything I did was because I loved you. I just wanted you to be better. To be worthy of me. That's not love, Maya said. Love doesn't leave bruises. Derek's face twisted with rage, and he raised the gun. But before he could speak, there was a sound at the door. A key turning in a lock that shouldn't have worked. Vincent stepped into the apartment. He looked different than Maya had ever seen him. Harder, colder, like every ounce of humanity had been stripped away, leaving only the dangerous thing underneath. His eyes swept the room once, taking in Derek by the window, Marco and Maya on the couch, the gun. I'm here, Vincent said. His voice was empty. Let them go. Did you come alone? Derek demanded. Yes. Prove it. Lift your shirt. Show me you're not wearing a wire. Vincent slowly pulled up his shirt, turning in a circle. No wire, no gun, nothing. Derek's laugh was triumphant. The great Vincent Morelli, standing in front of me unarmed. I could kill you right now. You could try. Vincent's eyes were on Maya, and something in his gaze made her chest ache. But you won't, because then you'd have to deal with Marco, and you're not fast enough for that. Marco's unarmed too. I checked. Did you check thoroughly? Vincent's smile was thin and sharp. Did you check his left ankle? Derek's eyes flicked to Marco for just a second, just long enough for Vincent to move. He was across the room before Derek could react, one hand locking around Derek's wrist, forcing the gun up. They struggled, crashing into the wall, and the gun went off with a deafening crack. Plaster exploded from the ceiling. Marco was moving too, pulling Maya off the couch, shielding her with his body. "Stay down!" Vincent and Derek grappled for the gun, and Maya watched in horror as Derek's finger found the trigger again. Another shot, wild, shattering the window. Vincent's fist connected with Derek's jaw, and Derek staggered back, but he didn't let go of the gun. "Should have killed me," Derek gasped, blood streaming from his nose. "Should have done it when you had the chance." "I'm fixing that mistake now." Vincent's voice was dead calm, even as they fought. His elbow cracked into Derek's ribs, and Derek doubled over, wheezing. The gun fell. It hit the floor and skittered across the carpet, stopping halfway between the two men. They both dove for it, but Vincent was faster, his hand closing around the grip. He rolled, came up on one knee, and aimed. Derek froze, on his knees, his hands raised. Blood dripped from his nose onto the stained carpet. "Do it," he said. "Go ahead. Make her watch." Vincent's finger was on the trigger. Maya could see it tightening. "Vincent, don't." Maya's voice cut through the moment. "Please." Vincent's eyes didn't leave Derek's face. "He tried to kill you. I know. But I don't want you to kill him." Maya stood on shaking legs, Marco's hand still on her shoulder. "I don't want his death on my conscience. On yours. He doesn't deserve your mercy. I'm not giving it to him. I'm giving it to me." Maya moved closer, carefully, until she was standing beside Vincent. "I don't want to be the reason you become something worse than you already are. I don't want our future built on his blood." For a long moment, Vincent didn't move. The gun stayed trained on Derek's chest, steady and sure. Then, slowly, he lowered it. "Marco, call the police." Derek's eyes widened. "What? You wanted consequences, Derek? Here they are." Vincent's smile was cold. "Arson, assault, kidnapping, attempted murder. You're going to prison for a very long time. And every day you're in there, you'll know that Maya is out here, free, happy, living the life she deserves." He leaned closer. "That's a worse punishment than death, and we both know it." Marco was already on the phone, speaking to what sounded like a detective. Vincent stood and pulled Maya against his side, his arm around her shoulders, the gun hanging loose in his other hand. Derek just knelt there on the carpet, broken and bleeding, as sirens began to wail in the distance. "It's over," Vincent murmured against Maya's hair. "It's really over this time." Maya turned her face into his chest and let herself cry. Not from fear this time, but from relief. From the bone-deep certainty that Derek couldn't hurt her anymore. That she'd made the choice to spare him not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to choose mercy. The police arrived within minutes. They arrested Derek, reading him his rights while he shouted about false imprisonment and conspiracies, his voice growing more desperate as they cuffed him and led him away. Vincent handed over the gun, along with Marco's statement and the evidence of Derek's threats. A detective Maya didn't recognize took her statement, gentle and professional, while Vincent stood nearby with his arms crossed, watching like a hawk. She told them everything, the kidnapping, the threats, the gun. The detective nodded and wrote it all down, promising her that Derek would be locked up for decades. When it was finally over, when the police had left and the apartment was empty again, Vincent pulled Maya into his arms and just held her. She could feel his heart hammering against her cheek, could feel the tension slowly draining from his body. "I thought I'd lost you," he said roughly. "When Marco called, 'I'm okay, we're okay.'" Maya pulled back to look at him. "But you came unarmed. That was stupid, reckless." Vincent's smile was wry. "I had 3 snipers on the building across the street. Marco had a gun in his boot, and I knew Derek would be too focused on humiliating me to actually check thoroughly." He cupped her face. "I would never put your life at risk like that. Never." You put your own life at risk. That's different. No, it's not. Maya's hands fisted in his shirt. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever make me watch you walk into danger like that. Then don't ever let yourself get kidnapped again. Vincent kissed her, soft and careful. Deal? Deal. They left the apartment together, walking down those stairs for what Maya knew would be the last time. The building, the street, all of it felt like a bad dream now, distant and unreal. Her real life was waiting in Vincent's car, in the penthouse by the harbor, in every moment that came after this. Marco drove them home, and no one spoke during the ride. There was nothing to say. Derek was gone, really gone this time, locked away where he couldn't hurt anyone. The restaurants would rebuild, the people in the hospital would recover, and Maya would wake up tomorrow in Vincent's arms, safe and loved and free. That night, Vincent made her favorite dinner and they ate on the balcony overlooking the harbor. The sun set in streaks of gold and crimson, painting the water like fire. I meant what I said, Maya told him, about not wanting his death on our conscience. I know. Vincent's thumb rubbed circles on her palm. You're better than me, Maya. Better than I deserve. That's not true. It is, but I'm selfish enough not to care. He pulled her, closer, until she was sitting in his lap, his arms wrapped around her. Thank you for that receipt, for being brave enough to ask for help. Maya thought about that desperate woman in the kitchen, scribbling 2 words with shaking hands. She felt like a different person now, stronger, whole. Thank you for seeing it, she whispered, for doing something. They sat there until the stars came out, holding each other, watching the city lights reflect off the dark water. And Maya felt, for the first time in her entire life, like she was exactly where she belonged. The receipt had saved her. But love, real love, the kind that protected without controlling, that strengthened without breaking, had set her free.